Hello, viewers. Thank you very much for joining Alpha One Canada's 2015 Virtual Education Summit. My name is Duncan Lam, and I'm your host. I'm very happy to introduce to you today Dr. Ron Gibson from the Department of Psychiatry at the University of British Columbia. Dr. Gibson will be talking to us today about coping with Alpha-1 antitrypsin deficiency. Dr. Gibson, do you mind saying a few words to our viewers? Maybe share with us your experience or your areas of expertise?
Certainly. I graduated from the University of Saskatchewan, and I practiced in several provinces of Canada, as well as New Zealand, Samoa, Britain, and Tanzania. My current activities include psychiatric outreach clinics to Terrace and Haida Gwaii in northern BC, and teaching students and residents. My other interests include mood disorders and insight-oriented psychotherapy, and I'm based in Vancouver.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gibson. Without further ado, let's proceed to your presentation.
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening. It is a pleasure and a privilege to be able to talk to you, and I want to thank Maybe McFedrin and Jim Mundy for giving me the opportunity. This talk will look at coping with Alpha-1 from an emotional or psychological point of view rather than from a medical perspective. I will try to cover several topics, including receiving the diagnosis of Alpha-1, stages of coping, and looking after ourselves by using a variety of coping strategies. Now, as you can tell, I'm just recovering from a cold, so I hope that you'll excuse my scratchy voice. By way of background, I was a family doctor for about 6 years before I saw the light and did my residency to become a psychiatrist now 30 years ago. I teach medical students and residents at the University of British Columbia, and I do outreach clinics to northern British Columbia. You may be interested in my Alpha-1 story. I was diagnosed as having Alpha-1 in 2002. Since July 2008, I have been lucky enough to receive augmentation therapy with weekly prolactin C infusions. I'd like to spend a little bit of time talking about the emotional impact of receiving a diagnosis of Alpha-1. In my experience, when one receives the diagnosis of Alpha-1, the reaction is a feeling of loss, or in fact a feeling of multiple losses. Among these are a loss of a sense of physical health, a loss of psychological health, that is, a loss of one's concept of oneself as a vigorous, capable, resilient person. There may be the loss of recreational activities such as playing tennis or cycling, and this in turn leads to a loss of social circles and friends, or it can do. If the illness is progressing, one may have to reduce or stop working, resulting in a loss of financial income and again the loss of social contacts. So I think that the theme at the beginning is one of many losses, and their impact will be different for each of us. As well, one might experience feelings about this being an inherited disease, for example, concern about children and grandchildren. I'd now like to talk about stages of coping or stages of grief. In my opinion, the more we understand our reaction to loss, the better we are able to cope with it. For this reason, I think it's useful to look at the 5 stages of grief as discussed by Dr. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Now, she originally did her work with patients who are dying, but I think there are things that we can learn from this model. She outlined stages of grief, which were shock and denial. Now this is the reaction of, "Are you serious? Give me a break. I have enough to deal with already." At the same time, the diagnosis may be a relief to finally know what is causing your symptoms. A second stage is anger. This is often the question, why is this happening to me? A third stage is bargaining. This is the reaction of, well, okay, but if I start going to church and pay my taxes on time, will this go away? A fourth stage is depression, and hopefully a fifth stage is acceptance. Now, there's several important points to be made about these stages. Firstly, they do not always occur in that particular sequence. Secondly, there are sometimes mixtures. For example, there may be, one may feel a mixture of anger combined with depression. Not everyone goes through each stage, and it's important to know that you don't have to experience each stage. Perhaps most importantly, it's the view that everyone proceeds at their own pace. It's important for the patient and their support person to give themselves permission to be just where they are for a while. However, if you find you are stuck in one stage for a long time, then getting some help is important. Now, a reasonable question to ask is, well, how long is too long? And I'm sorry, but I have no guidelines to answer that question. It's very individual, and it depends on individual circumstances. So let's turn now to talk about coping strategies. I would highly recommend to you this online book called The Big Fat Reference Guide, produced by AlphaNet in the United States. It is available online and has really a wealth of information. The website is on the slide. It also has a well-written and well-thought-out section on coping with Alpha-1. In psychiatry, we like to use what is called the biopsycho-social spiritual approach to management. Now, that's a bit of a mouthful. It just means looking at biological approaches, psychological approaches, social and spiritual approaches in management or in treatment. I'll first talk about biological approaches to coping. Now, I'll be discussing mostly things that you yourself can do, but I won't be touching on medical treatments. These approaches or steps or foundation blocks are straightforward things that you have probably heard of before and know already, so I'll review them rather quickly. The first is to have a healthy, balanced diet. The second, and I'm sure you've heard about this, is to stop smoking. The only comment I would make about that is that there are now several medications available which are quite helpful and double or triple the success rate of any given smoking cessation attempt. A third approach is exercise. Now, you will know that Julie Gallus and Melissa Fontaine are giving a talk about this, and I would certainly recommend that to you. From a psychological point of view, it's important to know that in terms of its effect on mood and depression, large, excellent trials report that regular exercise is as effective as antidepressants for mild to moderate depression. Another study was done on women with breast cancer receiving chemotherapy who were suffering from fatigue and lack of energy. Even though they had moderate to extreme fatigue, carefully graduated, and that's the key phrase, carefully graduated exercise in the end improved their level of energy. Now, these were brave souls, I'd say. A useful video to watch, which details the effectiveness of exercise, is called 23 and a half hours. So you just go to YouTube, type in 23 and a half hours, and you can watch this 9-minute video. The next topic I'd like to discuss is sleep. I'm sure you're aware that sleep is very important for mood, for energy, and to maintain healthy levels of immunity. Obviously, if you get short of breath at night or use oxygen, these are difficult obstacles to sleep. The best approach for improving sleep is called sleep hygiene. I don't have the time to go into that in detail, but I've included a link to a pamphlet on sleep hygiene produced by the Anxiety Disorders Association of BC. One hint is to avoid screen time, that is, watching TV, computer, or smartphone, for 2 hours before going to bed. The problem is that the blue light, which is emitted from screens, has a stimulating effect on the brain and will make it more difficult to initiate sleep. Another suggestion is an app for smartphones that some folks find helpful. This is called My Sleep Button. You can download it from iTunes. It's free, and it works for me. Oh, and I've just thought of another method of sleep induction. If you find yourself very sleepy and nodding off as you listen to this seminar, you can always try turning it on and listening to it as you go to sleep as a sleep induction method. I don't mind. One warning, this has not been validated in double-blind trials. A fifth aspect of a biological approach to an illness is keeping a journal. This is really a form of taking responsibility for your illness and managing your illness. I keep a journal, which is really an abbreviated kind of medical chart, because I tend to lose track of what antibiotic was last used, when my pulmonary function tests were last done, and all those kinds of important details. As well, in it I write down questions that I want to ask my very patient respirologist, because I find in my appointment with him I'm likely to forget some of the things I want to ask him. Let's turn now to psychological approaches for coping. The first thing I'd like to discuss is to try to reduce feelings of stress and anxiety. Now, obviously, this is easier said than done. There's no magic wand, and I think one has to put work and effort into it. One effective way to reduce stress and to relax is to use something that's called progressive muscular relaxation. Now, this is really quite straightforward. It consists of alternately contracting and then slowly relaxing different muscle groups in your body. Often this is combined with imagery or imagining pleasant scenes. Lots of studies indicate that this is a very effective way in eliciting what's been called the relaxation response. One example of progressive muscular relaxation can be found on on a YouTube video that I've put on the slide, or if you prefer a written handout, there's a reference to that as well. There are other methods of eliciting the relaxation response. These include something called autogenics, which is imagining different parts of your body becoming warm and then cool. Some people use self-hypnosis. Some people are able to do this through prayer or listening in a profound way to music. I don't think it matters which method you use, as long as you have some way of becoming more relaxed. Like riding a bicycle, the more you do this, the better you get at it. The progressive muscular relaxation can be done anytime, anywhere, and you can use an abbreviated form during the 30 seconds you have at a stoplight. A second psychological approach that I would encourage is cultivating a positive attitude. One way of doing this is using what's called a gratitude diary. This consists of taking note at the end of the day of 3 things or 3 encounters that you have with people that you've had during the day for which you can be grateful or give thanks. For example, a telephone conversation with a friend, listening to a favorite piece of music. It really doesn't matter what it is at all. Good studies indicate that this has a therapeutic effect on patients with depression, but I think it's helpful for all of us. You can write it down in a journal, but I find it's enough just to review it in your head before going off to sleep. Another strategy is to make an inventory of the things in your life that you enjoy, that give you pleasure, and then to make sure that you do several of these every day. These are what I refer to as kind of natural antidepressants, and it's important to have them in our lives. Becoming very popular now in psychiatry and psychology is developing a mindfulness or meditation practice. Although the meditations that are becoming part of regular psychiatric treatment come from Asia, meditation is actually part of many religious traditions, as you probably know, including Christian traditions. If you're interested in learning about this in depth, I would recommend the book Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction. In the back of the book there is a CD with guided meditations. Even doing 10 minutes a day is helpful. I think a key is that if you can focus on the now, on the present, then and get in the practice of doing that, the results show that over time you experience less suffering. Now there's a couple of interesting smartphone apps with guided meditations that I use and would recommend. One is called Stop, Breathe, Think, and it's available free from the iTunes store. Another useful smartphone app is called MindShift, also free from the iTunes store. MindShift is produced by the BC Anxiety Disorders Association in conjunction with the Ministry of Health in BC. There are 9 different modules that you will see. One is called Chill Out Tools, and many people find that helpful. A fourth psychological approach is the treatment of mental illness. Something like 1 in 5 Canadians will suffer from a mental illness at some point in their lives. If this happens, I urge you to go to your family doctor, who will refer you to an appropriate resource. These are very common and very treatable illnesses. A fifth suggestion is to nurture a sense of humor. When I was in New Zealand, I learned that the motto of the New Zealand Alpha-1 Association is emphysema without smoking, cirrhosis without drinking. This is a kind of black humor. I think it's true that humor lightens every load. I'd like to say a few words about social approaches to coping. It's important for all of us, I think, to maintain social contacts. It's certainly natural to want to go out less when one has a disability, but this is really not a wise way to proceed. There's a saying, you know when you're sick when your back goes out more than you do. I'd encourage you to resist the temptation to drop or diminish social activities as much as you are physically able. A second point is to investigate Alpha-1 support groups. One can learn a great deal from other people who have the same illness, both practical advice as well as resources and different ways of looking at things. In Western Canada, we have a telephone support group, which I think is very valuable. And I would strongly recommend that you attend at least one of these to find out what they're about. I think you'll find them useful. A third aspect is maintaining or developing confiding relationships. I would suggest to you that to ask for help or disclose problems can be an important step in a relationship or in developing a relationship. When you think of it, it's actually a compliment to the person from whom you are asking for help to do so, because you are trusting them by disclosing your need. I think that that's really the meaning of the old proverb, a friend in need is a friend indeed. I'll say make a few comments about spiritual approaches. Many people find that there is another dimension to life other than the physical reality that we see. For many of us, being active and always kind of on the go has been our modus operandi, our way of being in the world. One result of having a chronic illness is that we are forced to slow down. I've found that when walking up an uphill slope, I've literally had to stop and smell the roses. And I think in retrospect, this is no bad thing. A wise friend once told me, Ron, life is not a problem to be solved, but a mystery to be enjoyed. I'd encourage you to explore that mystery in whatever way seems true for you. I'd suggest that you remain or become open to a spiritual dimension in your life. Many people find that it gives them more strength to face adversity ahead. Well, those are some thoughts about coping with Alpha-1. I hope that you found it interesting, and I thank you for your attention.
This concludes today's featured presentation. On behalf of Alpha-1 Canada, I would like to thank Dr. Ron Gibson for taking the time to prepare and talk to our viewers. I'm sure our viewers have enjoyed this segment. Please be sure to check out the rest of our 2015 Virtual Education Summit featured videos on our website, www.alpha1canada.ca. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.